welcome. It's been a while since I've made a video, but um, this is one of my favorite videos to make, even though it's only my second time making it, but it's also one of my favorite videos to watch, and that is my favorite books of the year for 2024. That's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. I have my top 5, and yeah, I'll just get started. So first, at number 5, I have Watership Down by Richard Adams. This is a book I didn't think I would like as much as I did. You are basically following this group of rabbits as they are trying to find and establish a new home, and it's an adventure story, but it's also like so much more because it's really a story of perseverance, of courage, of determination, and I just loved it a lot. Like I really was like feel like my heart went out for the rabbits. I think that Richard Adams in this book, while the rabbits are, you know, animals, they're definitely representative, like metaphors for like people and society within kind of the group and the order of how things go. They have systems, they have hierarchy. You see, they have kind of power struggles and, finesse with dealing with different people and situations. And that's very true for how we are in the world as people are. Um, I what I really liked is I believe this is a children's classic, even though I would definitely say it has to be middle grade. I mean, if anything, what I really like about that is for children and for adults, you see that sometimes things happen and it's not your fault. There's really nothing you can do about it except for adapt and do your best and move forward. And you definitely see that over and over again in this book. I also think nature's a big thing in this book. It makes you think about how we are all really connected and every action has an impact on like the ecosystem of life. And yeah, it makes you think about that. But I would highly recommend it. It's a very, I want to say action packed, but I don't know if that's quite the right word for it. But it's like there was always something happening. There were always like, okay, we got over this hurdle, but now there's this one. And yeah, I just like found myself, like I said, feeling for all of the rabbits. There's Fiver and Pippin, who are the smallest of the bunch. I was worried about them. I was worried about them the whole time because I was like, oh my goodness, don't let anything happen to Fiver and Pipkin. And then I was worried about Hazel, who's kind of the kind of de facto leader of the group. I was worried about Bigwig, who's like the strongest of them, and because I was like, oh, he's struggling. If he's struggling, how they gonna make it? Like it was just so many, like he really gets you to care about the characters. And I couldn't believe I was caring so much about some rabbits. So I would definitely recommend this if you are in the mood for that type of story. Next up, I have Wild Ginger by Anchi Min. This is a very short book, but it's a very impactful and powerful book. You are following like two girls and their friendship living in Maoist China or communist China. And you see how they're both kind of underdogs because you have Maple and then you have Wild Ginger. Maple is an underdog because before Maoism, her father was a teacher And he is seen as being part of kind of the old way and as a threat to the new ideology that they want everyone to adopt. And then you have Wild Ginger, who is biracial. She's French and Chinese. Her father was French, and she has these like golden green eyes that give her away as being something other than just Chinese. And they, she, her father is thought to be like a spy, or that's what they tell her. And so that's why she is kind of an underdog and is kind of treated as kind of the bottom of the totem pole in the order of things. And so when they are young girls, they kind of like look out for each other and are there for each other. And you see as they like grow up what happens to their friendship as um, their ideologies kind of take two different directions. You know, you have Maple, who is, she's like, I need to go along with this because this is how I'm going to survive and this is how my family's going to survive. And then you have Wild Ginger, who is more like, I want to prove that I'm nothing like my father or what they say her father is. Um, and she really is like with it. Like she's like hardcore. And yeah, you're seeing all of like how that their friendship kind of develops with that. You're seeing how all of these things come into play as they become young women and they, you know, have crushes and flirtatiousness. Is that right? No, it's not really the word I'm looking for. Flirtation is too that's too intentional. It's not really intentional. Just how they, I guess, unintentionally and naturally just develop feelings for boys. And you see how all of that plays into kind of this like system of Maoism. And it was very, this book was so good. It was so short, but it was so good. And it was interesting to me because just to learn about another culture that you kind of like, I know about like communism in China, but to read like, even though this is fiction, like to read like a personal story of it, like experiencing it, was, you know, different for me and very interesting for me to read. um, and yeah, I really like this. The ending in this, blockbuster. This is a book I would love to see made into a movie. I think it would do really well as a movie. The ending was everything in this book. Like, it was everything. If you've read this, then you know I could see the ending as a movie. Like, it was very good. And yeah, highly recommend this. All right, next up, this was the only nonfiction on my list, and that is Say Nothing by Patrick Rodden Keefe. This is looking at the kind of history of like the troubles in Northern Ireland. You have the I don't want to say conflict, but you kind of have the internal struggle between the Irish Republican Army, or IRA, and the, I believe they were called Unionists. Um, and basically, the IRA, they were fighting for a united Ireland. They didn't want Northern Ireland to be separate from Ireland, and then you have the Unionists who are fighting for um, Northern Ireland to remain a part of the United Kingdom and under British rule. And so you kind of have, you're looking at the, really, I would say, guerrilla warfare between the two groups. But the way that the sides went, it's also kind of a battle between like Protestants and Catholics. And so um, that's like an added layer of, that's like an added layer to the conflict as well. But this was so good, I think, because it's narrative nonfiction. So while you're getting all these facts of history, they're all through the stories of people who were there and experiencing it. And I think this is like the first time I probably read narrative nonfiction, and I really enjoyed it. It just makes the story come alive. There were definitely times where I was thinking, oh, I wonder what's going to happen to that character. And I had to remind myself, like, these are not characters, these are people. Like, this actually happened to them, which makes it even crazier. Um, I will say the book is more from the perspective of the IRA. You're getting more their side. You're seeing kind of the internal workings of their organization, and you also kind of see the unraveling of that as well. Um, you know this the saying like snitches get stitches. Well, with the IRA, snitches just disappear. Ergo, the title say nothing. And another interesting thing that I found is, you know, like I said, it's like guerrilla warfare. So people are like blowing stuff up, they're having shootouts, there's a lot of like death, people dying. They're doing like hunger strikes to to get people's attention, and it's just a lot of people, you know, really putting their all into what they believe. And a lot of people in this cause were very young when they got involved in it. Like, so they're like 18, 19, their early 20s. And you just see how people's thinking develops over time as they get older. And you see people in the group kind of, they go in different directions. You have people who are like, okay, we got their attention, now we need to like work within the system and maybe make some compromises. And then you have people who are like, we can't compromise. Like, what about all those people that died? What about the people we killed? What about all those things we did? Like, those things would be nothing if we compromise. Like, what type of people are we to have done those things if we compromise? And then you have people who, as they get older, are like, look, I can't do this no more. Like, and so you have all of that mixed in, and it's it was just such an interesting thing to read about. I don't feel like here in America we really learn a lot about in history. I don't feel like I learned a lot about Northern Ireland or the conflict there. And so I just found it very fascinating because um, I don't know if it's a good thing, but it was very, like, a lot of the information was new to me. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed this. Highly recommend it. We'll definitely be reading more from this author. And yeah. All right, so now we're at my top 2 reads for 2024. And because this is my list, I'm making my own rules. So technically, these are more than one book, they're series, but I'm counting them as one. So yeah, that's just how we're doing it. So my number 2 top read of the year was Elena Ferrante's The Neapolitan Quartet. If um, This kind of took over my summer, like a whole month during the summer, I just devoured these books. In it, you're following the friendship between Elena and Linu. It's kind of a somewhat of a toxic friendship, and you are following them from like childhood to adulthood. You're seeing them as they kind of um, they're very competitive as children, and then as they get older, you see them kind of take different paths in life. You have Elena who chooses like school and a career, and you have Linu who chooses more of like that homemaker wife type of life. And so you're just seeing them in those different roles, whether they like them or not. And they really do like feed off of each other. And there are so many characters in these books, but they're all very like fleshed out. um, I did make a video where I go more in depth on my thoughts on this, so I won't talk about it a ton here, but I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. I feel like I want to read it again maybe in like a year or two. I think that would be really, really fun. I did watch the first few seasons. I'm not sure if I finished the first season of My Brilliant Friend, the HBO series, which is based off the books. The first book in this series is called My Brilliant Friend. And I don't know. I feel like maybe I would have appreciated it. I thought it was good, but because like I knew kind of what was going to happen, it wasn't as interesting. Like the twists and turns that happened in the book, the show was seeming it was pretty true to the book, and so it just wasn't as interesting. Um, so I didn't finish it, but this is a um, like a HBO series, so you might also want to watch that. I do think it was well done. It's in Italian. This takes place in Italy, if that wasn't clear, if I didn't make that clear. Um, but yeah, it was really, I would recommend that as well if you would like it. I just think maybe if I think also I was watching the show right after I finished reading these because I was just obsessed with it. And I think maybe I was just like, okay, I need to take a step back. Maybe it was too much. But maybe I would enjoy it if I waited a little bit to watch it and maybe forgot some of the details and more things were shocking to me. Um, but yes, this was my top read. Like I said, I did a video on this, so I'll link that and you can hear more of my thoughts on that. But yes, okay. Next, we have my top read of the year. This took over, the last video I made was like my October like reading possibilities, and those really got sidetracked because of this book, and that is the Cairo trilogy by Naguib Mahfouz. I might be pronouncing his name incorrectly, but this includes 3 books. It's Palace Walk, Palace of Desire, and Sugar Street. And I have to give a shout out to one of my favorite booktubers, Jaded Reads, because she was talking about Palace Walk in one of her videos, and I was like, ooh, that sounds really good. And then I went and I read like a little sample of it. And I'm a person who the majority of my books are used or they're gifts if they're new. And so I don't really buy new books. But when I was reading this, I found myself like reading the sample, and I just wanted to keep reading, and I was like, I want to read this right now. And so I actually bought this new, which is like crazy for me. It's following an Egyptian family over like 3 generations. The story starts just after World War One, and it goes up to the just before the end of World War Two, and you're seeing the kind of relationships in this family, and how they develop and change over the years as there are like political and societal changes happening in Egypt. And like, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed reading this. Like, first of all, the writing in this is absolutely beautiful. And I love how the author, you see how he has characters having mirroring experiences. Um, and you see how the different characters deal with that, being from different generations. So you might have like the father experiencing something, and then later you might see like a similar situation with like the son or the grandson, but you see how they like all handle it differently, all handle it the same, or maybe they handle it similarly. But I just thought that was so interesting how he weaved this story together with all the different characters. And you also have, I will say, politics and religion are huge in this book. So, um, but it's not like too much like over the top. I do think if I didn't know a lot about like the history, political history in Egypt, but I still, but it was still enjoyable for me. I do think if you know more, then like all of the political stuff, it's always through conversations that the characters are having. I think if you know a little bit about that history, those conversations maybe hit better for you, or if or you can maybe kind of get an idea of what is going to happen. Like there are times when I read a book and I'm like, oh, they're about to go into World War II, and they don't know it, but you know it because of the years, like that kind of thing. I think if you know the history, then you will um, maybe have a deeper appreciation for that than I did. And then, like I said, it's religion's a big part of this. This family's very religious, and you just see how religion is just is a part of every day. It's there, like how you say like God bless you, like it's like just in like general phrases people say. It's there for in times of hardship people turn to religion. It's there to justify actions even if those actions are not necessarily right. um, it's even there in like flirtation. I guess I should tell you a little bit about the characters. So I could talk about this book all day. It probably needs its own video, but you have the head of the family, Al Sahid Ahmad. I might be pronouncing some of these names wrong, but you have Al Sahid Ahmad. He is the father. He rules his family with an iron fist. He expects them to listen to him, obey him, and there is no other option. He has a temper and he can be kind of harsh at times. Um, but he's like a totally different person when he goes out in public. He's well respected in the neighborhood. He is seen as someone who is kind of level-headed. People come to him for advice. He also loves to go out and drink with his friends and party and have like serial affairs. So he's very much a hypocrite, because many of the things he does, if his family were to do, and some of them do those things, he like reprimands them. But I'm like, you are doing those things yourself. And then you have his wife, Amina. She's described as a docile and obedient wife. She is, and all my cat's meowing. Can I just record? Let me let her in. Hold on. Okay. Where was I? Oh, yeah. And then you have Amina. She is described as a docile and obedient wife. She marries when she's very, very young. I'm talking like 14. I think she's actually 13, but about to be 14. Lily. Do you guys want to see my fat cat? Come here, Lily. Say hi. Okay. Yes, she marries when they're very, very young, and she doesn't really like that her husband goes out every night and drinks. But she says something to him one time, he reprimanded her, and she never said anything again. But it's like, it's not even that she just accepts that this is her life. It's like she embraces it as like, okay, this is the example of a good man. So much so that when other characters have, experience like their husband like being unfaithful or doing something, she's like, okay, what your husband did wasn't right, but your reaction is crazy. Like it's like she doesn't even like speaking against her husband in her thoughts. Like that's how much how much of a hold he has on her, and how much the I guess religious principles are important to her in her life. And so yeah, that's his wife. And then there are the 5 children. You have Yasin, who is the oldest, and he's actually his oldest son, and he's actually the son from his first marriage. And then you have Fahmy, who is his first son with his second wife. And then Kamal, who's the youngest son. And then there are 2 daughters, Khadijah and Aisha. And all of the children really have like qualities of the father, but like to the extreme, like on steroids. So like Yasin, the oldest son, he has this insatiable appetite for women. Like I told you, the father's out here having like all these mistresses and affairs, but he is very you know, he's very strategic about who he's with, and he like does what he needs to do to keep it under wraps, where Yasin is like, I want her, I gotta have her, and that's all there is to it. And then you have Fami, who is in law school, and he's very like level-headed. He's like that part of the father that people like come to for advice. And then you have Kamal, who at the beginning of the story, he's kind of a prankster, but he really does, he becomes really a thinker and philosopher. And then you have the two daughters who, Khadijah, who is kind of considered like the ugly duckling of the family. And she has a temper like her father. Like, you know, she's the one who, in a fight, like a verbal disagreement, she gonna take that low shot, and she not gonna care. She don't care about hurting your feelings. She don't care about talking about you. Like, and then you have Aisha, who is just the beauty of the family, and she is a lover of music, just like her father loves music. And yeah, all of the characters, like there's just so much I can go into, but I will say this is mostly a male. I mean, the women have their time, but this is definitely more of a male focused story. I'll say the first book, Palace Walk, focuses more on like the father and Fami. The second book, Palace of Desire, is more of a focus on Yasin, the oldest son. And then the last book, Sugar Street, is more of a focus on Kamal. And honestly, for the women, I really wanted the mother. I really wanted Amina to have like she doesn't remain as docile the whole time of their marriage, but I wanted her to have like a waiting to exhale moment with, like, you know, Angela Bassett throwing his stuff in the car, burning up his clothes. Like I just wanted her to have like a like because it was so wrong what he was doing. He was out here in these streets, and I just wanted her to have a moment. Like, and I didn't get that. But I do think for the times, this was realistic, you know. And like Aisha's storyline, the youngest, the not the youngest, no, she's the youngest daughter. Like, it was just tragic. I just felt bad for her. I was like, dang, can she catch a break? And I like, her story was just really, really sad. And then Kamal, he is really the star, I would say, of this trilogy. I did read a little bit, and I believe that Kamal is kind of, that character is loosely based on the author himself, and he definitely does really, really shine. There are like philosophical kind of moments in the book where you're kind of looking at, okay, like, what is the meaning of life? What is the path to take? Those type of like philosophical thoughts, and they all come with Kamal's character. And that's very reminiscent of the author. I believe he like went to school and he was debating like what he wanted to study. He was kind of really into philosophy, and so you do kind of get that with the character. But I absolutely love this book. I could talk about it all day. Like, I finished reading it and I wanted to read it again. Like immediately. Like, the prose in this is just so good. I'm actually gonna read you like a few sentences. I won't give anything away with the storyline though. There was one that one part in the book, one of the characters is like falling in love for like the first time and he's young. And I just really felt like this captured that like feeling when you're young and all your feelings are just like really intense. And you're just like, you know, like you just think like, oh, this is like the greatest thing ever. And so he says, I'm a person whose heartbeat makes the walls groan with complaints, since I'm consumed by an inferno of waiting. Like, like his feelings are so intense. And then another part, he says, you enjoy absolute freedom or yield only to laws beyond our comprehension, while I am compelled by an overwhelming force to revolve in orbit around you, as though you were the sun and I the earth. Have you found some freedom at the seashore that you do not savor in the villas of Al Apasiya? Of course not. By the truth of everything you mean to me, you're not like the others. In the garden of the mansion and on the street, your feet leave fragrant prints. In the heart of each friend, you leave memories and hopes. A young lady, welcoming yet inaccessible, you pass between us but remain aloof, as though the East had requested you as a gift from the West on the anniversary of the Night of Destiny at the end of Ramadan. But it's just like that's like the writing flows. Like I don't know if I'm the only one, but sometimes I like to read my books aloud, but all books don't pass that read out loud test. Like they just don't have like the cadence and like the flow, but this book definitely has that. This, yes, favorite book of the year. Highly, highly recommend. I want to pick it up and read it again. Um, yeah. Oh, last thing, one other thing I wanted to mention. Like, I also found it interesting how the beginning of the book and kind of later the beginning of the first book and then in the last book, it's kind of you see again, like I told you, like the characters have mirroring experiences. You see kind of mirroring events, but they're under like they're just like totally different, and you just see how life changes over time. But a big thing with that is you see aging is another big theme in this book, and it's something you definitely think about because obviously the characters are getting older. Al-Sayed Ahmad gets older, his wife Amina gets older, and you see how um, the characters may have like some regrets, and like you just see how like you're not young forever, and how like especially like your body changing over time. That was something that really stuck out to me just being in my 30s. So that was just something I wanted to throw in there. I do think aging's another big theme in this. um but yeah, so those are my favorite books I read this year. I think it was a good variety. If you've read any of these books, love to chat with you about it, especially if you've read this one. But yes, thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.